Alright, it's time to read another book here. I believe we'll choose this one next.
Unfinished chapter of Terra Incognita by Jacob van Ostade. A hitherto unpublished fragment of the manuscript unearthed following indications furnished in the Vatican Library's Expurgatory Index.
In those icy and unwelcoming lands, the rites of wizards and healers are deeply rooted in ancient legend. Mysterious and cruel beings are thought to have ruled over the Arctic plains in times past. A cursed city, enclosed by massive walls, is believed to stand to this day. It contains fabulous treasures and is inhabited by the degenerate descendants of those who instilled centuries of terror in the hearts of the people. These people, naturally placid, are seized with rage and horror at the very mention of the prisoners of the ice. Were these dreadful captives to be freed from their frozen cells, they would reap a horrifying tribute of human flesh. These blood-curdling beings may be invoked by certain ritual words. They can even be controlled, albeit with the greatest of difficulty.
Alright, there's so much going on in the backstory now. Like, is this really necessary? I mean, I guess why wouldn't it be if it's in the game? I don't know.
I admit to being impressed by these tales, repeated to me on many occasions and in a number of different places during my travels in the region. I have also seen troubling cult objects, sculpted in a material unknown to me. Another remarkable fact is that local Eskimos experience great distaste in pronouncing certain words, and invariably avoid saying them. Here is a living example of the power that words contain. As it is said in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word.
Alright, well, next book. It's like the second from the last one or something. Oh.
If Rocks Could Talk, or
What?
The Story of a Louisiana Plantation by the Marquise de Chamfray.
After the criminal selling off of Florida by the foul usurper, my father elected to remain in this inhospitable land, where we were free at least to express our royalist feelings, and hope our country would come to its senses. In 1818, a certain Pickford bought up Ledoux's land, after the poor fellow had ruined himself in unfortunate speculation. Pickford soon turned out to be the most loathsome human we had ever encountered.
Okay.
He was an adventurer of the worst kind, nouveau riche, and bloated with a grotesque sense of self-importance. First came the incessant army of men with shovels, digging into the mountain of earth that was to fill in the surrounding swamp. The undertaking was quite stupendous. We learned from a slave that the final objective was to connect the existing caves with another one of gigantic proportions.
Are we tying into the caves now? And these people from like France or Sweden or whatever now tying into it, and pirates and whoever talking about caves and.
Racked by a mania of persecution, Elia Pickford constantly fired his workers and hired new ones. He did all he could to keep anyone from learning about his plans. My father was amused and said, "The poor fool will end up getting lost in his own cave." Well, the walls went up and tongues started wagging. Our detestable neighbor had been a sailor, a ruffian grown rich on questionable trade. Distasteful stories were told of him.
Oh, there's a map. Can I use that as a map to look at where I'm going, like in like Silent Hill or whatever? But I'd have to flip through these pages first. I'd have to load up the book on the screen and then flip through the pages. Which might not be all that hard. I'd have to know how many pages to flip into also.
When the work was finished, Pickford invited us to the opening of his rambling mansion, which he named Versetto.
Oh, really?
My father asked what the strange name meant. Pickford answered, "Versetto reminds me of Astarte, the fertility goddess. Around here, the name is Shub-Niggurath, I believe. That a name so steeped in evil should be said aloud came as not such a shock to my father, as he himself confided in me some while later. We left immediately."
Hold on. So steep in evil should not be said aloud. Came not such a shock to my father as he himself confided in me. Well, later we got to meet him. So I missed some of that. Zoned out a little bit. There's just a lot going on in the background. Yeah, reading into it once, pretty much, or a bit after another. But okay, interesting. The origin of Versetto reminds me of the fertility goddess, as in like, you know, for I don't know what evil, you know, Shub-Niggurath was supposed to mean. Fertility, that just means, you know, being able to give off offspring, don't it? Or am I thinking of a different word? I don't know. Fertility, yeah, like in the movie Children of Men, the huge problem in that movie is infertility. Right? Not being able to give off offspring. Well, I don't understand what's so evil. I don't know. Maybe Astarte, whoever that is supposedly evil or something. That a name so steeped in evil should be said aloud came as not such a shock to my father, as he himself confided in me some while later. He left immediately. Okay. Was it not such a shock because he confided about it and got it off his chest, or would it have become more of a shock if he had not confided?
In June of 1862, Versetto was burned down in unexplained circumstances.
What?
It was undoubtedly the deed of some jealous Yankee or another. It was amazing to watch the servants rushing into the flames to try and save their bullet-riddled master. After that terrible night, Versetto fell into ruin. Its blackened walls were soon overgrown, as human-built works always are, by ever-present nature.
Whoa. Burned down? What? They built it back up? Probably.
In 1875, the property was eventually bought by a gentleman whose name was Howard Hartwood.
Oh.
I was sorry that my father, who delighted in fine conversation, was no longer alive to enjoy the company of this new neighbor. Learned and well-versed in history, he had made a particular study of piracy. It was Hartwood who told me that Pickford had commanded a ship that flew the flag of piracy. That explains the scoundrel's great wealth.
Huh.
Hartwood was fascinated by Pickford and undertook a great deal of research in an attempt to find some treasures that he was convinced the pirate had hidden. He went through the ruins inch by inch. He then had the burnt-out house rebuilt exactly as it had been, and refurbished the library that had miraculously escaped the flames on the night of the Great Fire.
Whoa.
Hartwood set about studying every volume in that library, and often talked to me of his...
Okay, the library wasn't touched by the flames when the mansion was burned down because of that room. I wonder if it was because of that room where the pentagram is. Unless well, that shoots my theory out of the sky. If that room was not thought to be built until after the place was rebuilt, or whatever. That room was not installed until after the place was rebuilt, or whatever. I don't know. Okay, the last sentence said, Hartwood set about studying every volume in that library, and often talked to me of his... Jeremy Hartwood. Howard Hartwood? Is that Jeremy Hartwood's father? Hartwood set about studying every volume in that library, and often talked to me of his...
research.
Really?
He was a handsome widower, deeply attached to his son Jeremy, who was later to become a professional artist.
Who was later to become a professional artist. My paintings or my drawings or whatever Jeremy was talking about in his diary are clearly the work of a lunatic, because he was going insane. But where did this all tie into? Well, piracy. They talked about whoever was associated with piracy. And then somebody here, it just kind of slipped me because I'm a little bit brain tired, but somebody was involved or associated, whatever, with all the Satanism kind of stuff.
Hartwood worked incessantly, first from the room I offered him, then from his own freshly restored home, which he rebaptized Derceto. I imagine he hoped to enlist the help of the god of good fortune in his treasure hunt. As far as I have ever been able to tell, all his searching came to nothing. There were no lost treasures to be found at Derceto. I learned of Hartwood's death while I was in Paris. But that, as they say, is another story.
That, as they say, is another story. I learned of Hartwood's death, Howard Hartwood's death, as I was in Paris. So this wasn't written that long ago, to my understanding. Jeremy's father, Howard, died, not of a heart attack, but in Jeremy's diary, he said it was revealed to him by somebody. I think his name was Waits, or maybe that's the wrong person. That his body was twisted, and he bit off his tongue and choked on his own blood. That's what happened, apparently, to Howard Hartwood, Jeremy Hartwood's father. Whose death that this person reading here, that this person narrating here learned of which, that she learned of while she was in Paris, which is another story. I wonder if she knows all the details. Well, I was saying that this was recent, but when it was bought up by Hartwood, apparently like the 1870s, and Jeremy's diary was written in the 1920s. So I mean, by recent, it could have been in like those several decades. Well, those those few decades. I think we got, what is it? One more. Ooh, the music starting out. Does it seem to start up like when we find out something that's kind of dark or come across something that's gonna be dark?